Hello everyone, welcome to the stream. Nice to see you all here. Good evening, and I hope you had a fantastic day, or a nice evening, or whatever time zone you are in. It's always hard to tell. A good morning for some, I guess. Already a lot of questions going on in chat. Also really nice to see you here. And just see, I don't know. Why was Data's brother named LotR? That's a good question. I have no idea, to be honest. It's a good question why we had such an unusual name. Maybe because, you know, maybe the idea is the following. Data is called Data, as in data, so he is the one who sticks to the data, while his evil, so to say, evil brother is not sticking to the data, and he's more, I don't know, more vague in what he's doing in his moral understanding. So he's more like law, more ambivalent, if that's a word. It's ambivalent, the English word. However it's pronounced, but you know what I mean. It's a good question, in my opinion. When we're talking about Star Trek, I don't know why, but ambivalent. I think I said almost right. Did I miss anything? No. Yeah, law's also a type of data. Exactly. That's kind of what I mean. It's also kind of data, but it's less reliable, if that makes sense. And this maybe reflects the character of law, but I don't know. But it's a really good question. Moral objective versus moral subjective. Yeah, maybe like something like that. I get that it's a joke, but I think it's an interesting question, though. And I think if something is interesting enough, it's worth at least discussing for a short moment. But we are not here today to discuss the lore of Star Trek, but of the Lord of the Rings and Tolkien. So there's that. Good, good. Many have come. Like the palm tree. Law. I was wondering if you had were familiar with E.R. Edison. He was in the Inklings with Tolkien, but his work predates John Ronald Tolkien. He wrote The Worm Ouroboros. No, not really, I have to admit. Is it something you would recommend looking into, though? The Bionicle fan? Another LotR stream. Chris has certainly been treating us as of late. Yeah, I said I want to, since I'm currently not working on that many, or I don't know, I kind of work on other projects right now a bit. And sometimes, I don't know, I'm currently struggling a bit with getting my motivation to make a LotR video, in a way. So I think if I'm not making LotR videos, I can at least produce content in the form of these LotR streams, where we also discuss the lore a bit, but I don't have to write a script and structure and do editing and voice recording and all these things, even though I kind of like them. Sometimes they also can get annoying. And the problem is always people often expect from me very long LotR videos, and that's kind of, they're tough to make always, I feel like. It takes weeks of very focused and concentrated work making these long LotR videos. So I think to compensate for the lack of LotR videos, maybe we can discuss the lore here in a lot of detail, in these streams here. So I think that's kind of a good compromise, in my opinion. Even though I kind of want to do lore videos, but like I said, sometimes you need a little break. To summarize, what, if anything, did Tolkien ever reveal about Beorn's bride? I think there's, like, we only know he had, like, that there are descendants of him. So I'm not aware of that there are that many information about this. We can maybe look into this. I have a question with regards to the Reader's Companion. Okay. You think they will have Beorn's strange son and his bear people in this in the hunt for Gollum? That's also a good question. I don't really think so. Maybe if they lack characters in this region to some degree, it's possible. Or if they see kind of an interesting story to be told there. Hard to tell, but I think they would have a lot of free room, if that makes sense, for their own inventions, which is good, but it can also be bad. The worm Ouroboros is written in 16th century English, but I think Tolkien actually liked Edison's work, unlike Lewis. Like epic fantasy, it's probably worth checking out. Okay. Suppose that Beorn found his wife among the woodmen followers, or might have returned to his original people for her. That's really hard to tell. Did Blueberry have a sister asking for a friend? You mean Goldberry? Maybe Blueberry is the sister of Goldberry. That's not confirmed, I think. We only know that the river woman is the mother of Goldberry. I think that's all we know about her family, so to say. Okay, Mark has an interesting question. Is the following statement factually sound, aka vulnerable in any way? Aeglos in the hands of Gil-galad together with Narsil, wielded by Elendil, brought down Sauron. Would say that seems to be a correct statement. Because in the text it is let me see. Where is it? I beheld the last combat on the slopes of Orodruin, where Gil-galad died and Elendil fell and Narsil broke beneath him. But Sauron himself was overthrown, and Isildur cut the ring from his hand with the hilt shard of his father's sword and took it for his own. I would say, yeah. The problem is always, it's such a vague description, in my opinion, that Tolkien could have left something out, but I guess the things he did not leave out, which would, in my interpretation, be always the important ones, are that Aiglos and Narsil were able to overthrow Sauron. Currently just checking the Silmarillion description of the wording. But also an interesting question. Oh, I forgot something to do, chat. As always. For the people wondering, we could just have the chat showing up here. Just takes a moment for it to load, but then we might be able to have that. In the meantime, it's not overthrown. Let us see. But at last the siege was so straight that Sauron himself came forth, and he wrestled with Gil-galad and Elendil, and they both were slain, and the sword of Elendil broke under him as he fell. But Sauron also was thrown down, and with the hilt shard of Narsil, Isildur cut the ruling ring from the hand of Sauron and took it for his own. Then Sauron was for that time vanquished, and he forsook his body, and his spirit fled far away and hid in waste places, and he took no visible shape again for many long years. Okay, this should now work. Pop the chat out. Nice. Okay, chat, I need to do some production here really quick. And you hopefully know by now that I'm bad at production. But it's also always not that easy. Okay, we got it. Just have to move the chat somewhere. Maybe here. So there is, if I remember correctly, a letter. Where this is maybe described in a bit more detail. No. That's. I could swear there was a text where Tolkien expands a bit on these ideas, but I forgot. actually saw a production of Mother Goose with the Golden Egg, where Sir Ian McKellen played Mother Goose. It was absolutely hilarious. He kept making Lord of the Rings jokes. Okay, nice. That sounds funny. So, reading Lord of the Rings for the first time, and it's interesting the differences between book and film. There are quite a few. I read The Hobbit last year. The Hobbit movie had some good moments, I agree. It had some good moments, but the films also have a lot of problems. But the book is so much better. Why? I mean, especially in the case of The Hobbit, I just follow the law as I guess am I asking. If you can improve on it, then yes, but make it worse. I think in the case of The Lord of the Rings, I can understand most changes towards the book. Like most of the changes, in my opinion, are kind of based on the limitations or problems of film. Like in a book, you have a limited amount of time. In a film, you have a limited amount of time. Let's say for one film, in the case of Lord of the Rings, 3 to up to 4 hours. 4 hours is for film extraordinarily long already. 3 hours is considered a very long film already. Usually we're talking about like 2 hours. And the problem is, if your budget is or your plan is to make 3 films, then you have to get all the Lord of the Rings books, for example, into these 3 films. As a result, you have to make changes. Then books work differently or good at different things than film. Like in a book, it's far easier. I don't know, since in a book you read it and the story happens in your mind and you start to imagine it and to immerse yourself. I think in a book, I wouldn't say that pacing in a book is not important, but it's completely different in an audiovisual medium, how you perceive time and space and how scenes are connected and how story progresses, especially in the tradition of film, what we are used to now. As a result, to make these things work, you have to speed up certain things. Because some things are not that. Some stuff you can easier communicate on film, some stuff is much more difficult to communicate. And in the end, you have to find like a balance between all of this. In the case of The Hobbit, though, why does The Hobbit have so many problems? I think the main problem for The Hobbit is for sure that The Hobbit was originally not a Peter Jackson film. It was planned made by, or the director of the project left the project very late, before it started, kind of. And then Peter Jackson had to jump in and had like 6 weeks to prepare for that. That's nothing. For Lord of the Rings, I think he said he had like 2 years or so. So just to give you in perspective. As a result, he has to make this film, which is basically the vision of somebody else, and have to kind of work with what he got, what was prepared, change it so to his liking. So in the end, it's not a wonder that these films turned out strange, to say the least. I would maybe even say it's a wonder that their films got, in the end, somewhat decent and not a complete catastrophe, if that makes sense. Like, it's really strange, this project. I also think in Lord of the Rings, it made sense to have 3 films because it's split in 3 books anyway. So the let's say some chapters were moved around here and there for sure, for dramatic and pacing reasons, which, as said, makes complete sense. In the Hobbit case, it's different because you have a very short book, which is basically enough to tell in 1 film or maybe 2, and they stretched it to 3 films, so they had to come up with a lot of things and plots and whatnot. And The problem is that the stuff they added to it often doesn't work. I would say some stuff works, like the White Council integration into the Hobbit films. This, in my opinion, is a nice addition. But I'm not the biggest fan of, I don't know, giving, for example, Legolas and Tauriel, which are not part of the original story, so much screen time, and the conflict and the changes and so on. And The Hobbit is kind of a strange book, I think. Strange sounds so negative, but you definitely notice it's old and it's maybe Tolkien's first story that got successful and so on. So and it's weirdly connected, but at the same time disconnected to the lore. It's also, I don't know, it has many weird mentionings and or mentions in the book, like the werewolves in the last desert or whatever the original phrasing was, and so on. There's so many unusual elements in this book where I often wonder, okay, it's kind of now canon in a way, but it's also strange. Yeah. For example, yeah, the left-handed Jedi puts it a good point to it. That's why they left out the scouring of the Shire. It would be strange at the end, after you are now coming to the end and are able to conclude the story. Like The Lord of the Rings, Return of the King has already, I don't know, multiple endings, so to say. There are multiple sections in the film where the film could have just ended, and it would be a good ending. Like, it's a film of endings, so to say. And this guy, like, starting a new plot line in the Shire with Sharky and his ruffians, that would be strange. And then end it there, get the end of Saruman there. That it's a conflict that is too small to compete with the big conflict, especially in film perspective. I think in a book it kind of works because it's another additional character development moment, and it feels like a little side story added to it, if that makes sense. Like I said, in a book something like this can work. In film it doesn't really work. So I can understand why Peter Jackson left it out from it. Like how in the film Saruman dies. Yeah, I think they found a good way to show Saruman's end, for sure. Yeah, the Scouring of the Shire could have been definitely its own little film, I think. Yeah, the killing of Saruman prevents, of course, the Scouring of the Shire. There's a little hint at it in the Galadriel's mirror scene where Frodo sees the hobbits enslaved and so on, and the Shire destroyed. Let's call it a little reference that we get there. So yeah, Bjorn, like I would love to tell you more about Bjorn and the skin changers. I think there's just unfortunately very little we know of. Yeah, Grimbjorn. He was a chieftain of the Bjornings, dwelt in the region of the Vale of Anduin. The question was, there was a question about Bjorn we had earlier, and I think there is too little we know about him. Interestingly, though, that in the movie, Galadriel says the scouring will only happen if the quest fails. Yeah, that is also kind of a point. I mean, the reason for this... Oh, Stifkin is welcome. Nice to see you. The reason for this is, I guess... Peter Jackson, like, does not want to show the scouring, and of course they are successful, so they don't need to show it. But yeah, of course, at the end, if Sauron wins and gets the ring back and finds Frodo in Mordor and gets the One Ring, he could have gotten the means or power to be powerful enough to overthrow the whole of Middle-earth. And then, of course, this would include the Shire. I want too many spoons, stolen. Yeah, there might be some inspiration for Beorn. Is there any mention that Grimbeorn, the son of Beorn, could also was a skin changer? Like it's really likely that the wife of like Beorn isn't he considered the last of the skin changers? Or is this just a Hobbit thing, chat? A Hobbit film thing. Let us see. The source is Queer Lodgings. Let me look into the Hobbit book. It's sometimes very difficult to, especially if there's like a half sentence information. Sometimes the stuff in your head starts starts mixing together. You can't I can't tell him, was it in the book, was it in the film? Oh, good morning, the amazing bad boy. Nice to see you. Good that you get up that early. He's very strong and a skin changer. Okay, the word skin changer only appears 2 times in The Hobbit, it seems. No, I think I can't find more here skipping through it, but maybe there is something. It seems like in the book it's not implied that he's the last of the skin changers. Maps version. I have to look at your... Can you post your question again, Mari? Queer lodgings, my home. Many meetings. It's a Lord of Rings and many meetings. Let us check the Lord of the Rings book then. Many Meetings is book 2 at the first chapter. Frodo learned that Grimbeorn, the old son of Beorn, was now the lord of many sturdy men, and to their land between the mountains and Mirkwood neither orc nor wolf dared to go. Indeed, said Glúin, if it were not for the Beornings, the passage from Dale to Rivendell would long ago have become impossible. They are valiant men and keep open the high pass and the ford of Carrock, but their tolls are high, he added with a shake of his head, and like Beorn of old, they are not over fond of dwarfs. Still, they are trusty, and that is much in these days. Nowhere are there any men so friendly to us as the men of Dale. They are good folk, the Bardings. The grandson of Bard the bowman rules them. Brand, son of Bine, son of Bard. he is a strong king, and okay, here it does not have. Well, the Bjornings are the best bakers that I know of, but they are none too willing to deal out their cakes to travelers these days. I can't. At least I can't find it. Maybe somebody has a idea where this could be written. I know Sauron. Like it seems like the ability to change his skin. I mean, in theory, you could also argue Radagast is a skin changer because he could also change his appearance. But I don't know if this is like a special like a folk in the world of Tolkien, then we know of course that Sauron and Radagast are not part of that simply because they are Ainur, like from another group, and they have basically the ability to change their physical form. Like Sauron also could do that, as you mentioned, but that has to do with them usually as being spirits, and they don't need a physical form, but they took one. As a result, they can manipulate their physical form as well, then change their appearance. Depending on their lives and usage of that form, there might be limitations to that. Thunder bear skin changes. It would be funny. Maps and versions. Okay, we have to look into the map stuff. Yeah, so one question I just wanted to give an answer. Time Lord Chris, did the goblins evolve when they became orcs? Or is it just purely a name change? I think it's mostly a name change. Tolkien had like the idea in The Hobbit to use still goblins, and then when he started writing Lord of the Rings, he liked the word orc more and more and used that instead, but it's used kind of synonymously. For Tolkien, let me just read the letter. Orc, the word, is, as far as I am concerned, actually derived from Old English orc, demon, but only because of its phonetic suitability. Nowhere clearly stated to be any particular origin, but since they are servants of the Dark Power and later of Sauron, neither of whom could or would produce living things, they must be corruptions. They are not based on direct experience of mine, but I suppose a good deal to the goblin tradition. Goblin is used as a translation in The Hobbit, where orc only appears once, I think, especially as it appears in George MacDonald, except for the soft feet, which I never believed in. The name has a form Urch in Sindarin and Uruk in Black speech. So yeah, Tolkien implies here that he used goblin as a translation for that name in The Hobbit, and then later he only used orc once there. In Lord of the Rings he uses goblin rarely and mostly uses the term orc there, but it seems to be the same. I think there's another letter where it explains it similar. Shagard, the most hilarious name in all of Tolkien. Why is that? Yeah, map-wise, Karen Wynne Fonsted's Atlas of Middle-earth, there are many maps, and she put in a lot of work. So yeah, it's in the case of where Bjorn found his wife, like, I don't know, if the others have the same ability, then it seems there are simply more skin changes, and the wife of Bjorn could also be a skin changer, but I don't know. A question about the dwarves. The map versions, okay, I'm not sure. So I couldn't find your question, Murray. In case you can maybe repost it, but I only have we many good Middle-earth maps besides those drawn by Christopher Tolkien? Like, yeah, I think the official map is, I guess, the most important one. There are, of course, some other versions of maps. Tolkien also made some drafts and sketches of how he imagines Arda as itself, how it developed in different states, when it was flat, and so on. And yeah, all this Karen Wynne Fonstad used in her time, all that was released at her time, to form the Atlas of Middle-earth. This was, I think, in 1981 or something. Let me just see, when was it released? Yeah, 1981. 29th of May 1981, revised version from 1991. Still, in this, unfortunately, Karen Fonstedt died in 2005. So she never could... She was unfortunately not around anymore to make like a new version or an updated version with the knowledge from the books that came out later. And in those, of course, we get some information that unfortunately go into a different direction than her interpretations of the source material she had available at her times. It doesn't mean, though, she made a mistake. She simply had not access to the other material, and couldn't do, like, she could not have known it. Some of these were corrected in the revised version from 1991, however not all of it. For example, she assumed always that, for example, the Sea of Rhun was part of the Sea of Helkar for some time. Well, I can just show here. We have production stuff when we talk about maps, so... Here originally I also had the same mistake because I oriented heavily on her book. But you see, here is now the second age version. And here you see the Sea of Rhun is around at the same time. The sea below, the Sea of Helkar, is around. And she always assumed that the Sea of Rhun was part of the Sea of Helkar, it's the leftover of it. But that's not the case. And the reason for that is we only know since, I think, Peoples of Middle-earth or War of the Jewels or something, that those both lakes were around when the elves were on their great journey. So we know, okay, both existed at the same time. And in the atlas you will see that this image differently. I made the same mistake because I used the atlas and then only doing research later, or it was a hint by my moderator, Kirdan, who's always knows quite well about map stuff, and said, well, what changed? But yeah, it's very interesting to see that at this time, like, in my opinion, it's a reasonable assumption that this is a leftover of this Sea of Helkar. Like, little mistakes like these, unfortunately, you find in her maps, but still, like, I took some... I also made some of these maps, drew them, and did some research on locations and so on. And every time I did this and found like a half sentence somewhere, I also noticed that this was already covered by Karen Wynne Fonstedt. So she definitely did research her atlas with like a lot of precision. Like, she thoroughly researched the material available at her time and made these maps out of this. And as a result, her work is still to be respected. You just have to know there are some... I don't like calling it mistakes, but there was some information that are outdated in this. I think outdated is maybe a word. That doesn't mean the atlas as a whole is outdated, just some ideas of her time, they are now outdated with the release of more of Tolkien's notes and material in later books. But these came often out pretty much too late for her to consider, unfortunately, and yeah, that's why we have this here. Still, I still use the Atlas of Middle-earth a lot, because I know most, like 99% of it is pretty accurate. But yeah, beyond this, we have the Christopher Tolkien maps. There is also another person who worked on the maps. I have to look up. I always forget the name. What is the other person who worked on the maps? Just can't the name. It won't come to my mind. Try to look it up in the meantime. Pauline Baines, I think. Yes. Yeah, Pauline. She also worked with on these map concepts and so on. So yeah, there's also the Minecraft team who made Middle Earth in Minecraft. I would say that kind of counts as a map, I think. I can't tell. I would assume they also did a lot of research and it's very accurate, but scale in Minecraft, I guess the scale can be a problem, but on one side. But yeah, I don't know. I haven't looked into that project myself, so can't comment on it. I find it impressive, though, nonetheless, though. Just in time for the maps. Exactly. Most important part there. Also, a question we have this question quite often. It feels the question was the Arkenstone a Silmaril? It's always an interesting question. Let me see if I have an image of the Arkenstone. I definitely have an image of it. Should be the last film, right? The Arkenstone. Is it a Silmaril? So officially, wait, Rebo, nice to see you. I'm listening. Thanks for the stream. Yeah, nice for you to join. Thank you for your support. What was I? Yeah, the Arkenstone. So the Arkenstone is a kind of a strange one. It is definitely possible that Tolkien had a Silmaril in mind once in case of the Arkenstone. So that this idea somewhere at some point existed in Tolkien's mind is at least a plausible assumption. I would, though, we don't know, I think, 100% for sure, but it's, in my opinion, definitely some likelihood behind it. But in the released version of The Hobbit, The Lord of the Rings, and so on, now Christopher Tolkien's Silmarillion, and so on, the Arkenstone can't be a Silmaril. That is definitely not the case. Yeah, that's also, Adam kind of makes here the important point. There are, let me just see. Let me see if I find a good quote for it. Probably not. But yeah, the idea definitely there's some hints that go into this direction. It's always difficult to find such small lore snippets. I'm currently searching. Not sure if I can provide you the perfect quote for it. Yeah, the Arkenstone is there's a chapter in the book, The History of the Hobbit, and there are some interesting notes here and there. I just have to double check something. It's just. No, it's not here. Not here. That's like a translation into Old English or something. And there we have let me just see. This work is associated with the 1930 Quenta and only very slightly later in date, that is contemporaries with Tolkien's work on The Hobbit. And among the very earliest work Tolkien did on the Annals was an Old English version by Elfwine/Eriol, the frame narrator of the Book of Lost Tales, in which the entry given above is translated thusly. And now comes Old English. I can post the Old English section here for you people in chat for you to read, because there are some words I potentially would butcher here. Feanor Noldena Laford Worthe Silmarillas Whereon alone the word, and he mentions the word for the Silmarilli Eorclanstanas. I'm not sure if I pronounce this correctly, but yeah, you could translate Eorclanstanas with Arkenstones. Literally translated, the year 2500, the MMD. Here, though cunning craft, artistic skill, the Noldor elves devised, thought, and created many gems, and Feanor, the Noldor Lord, wrought the Silmarils, that were precious holy stones. That is the Eorclastanas, holy stones. And yeah, could also be translated with Arkenstones here in this context. So yeah, in this particular section, we get some hints and ideas by John D. Radcliffe about this concept of the Arkenstone being idea. The idea that the Arkenstone could be a Silmaril or was at last somehow linked to the Silmarils in Tolkien's mind has additional support from the theological roots of the word. As Jacob Grimm pointed out back in 1844, there was little stone lore in Teutonic mythology, but foremost among what he discovered, he cites the time-honored myth of the holy Jarknastein on the Eldar Edda, listening the Old English equivalent Eorcanstan, Eorcan, Arken, and postulating Gothic Eirknasteins, an Old English German Erchanstein, from Jakob Grimm, Teutonic mythology, and so on and so forth. Furthermore, within the Edda, the term is at one point applied to gems made by craft, not natural stones. In Old English, the most famous usage of Erkanstan occurs in Beowulf, line 1208a, where it appears under the variant spelling Erklanstanas. Interestingly enough, it is used there to describe a wonderful jeweled necklace of gold and gems given to Beowulf by Queen. I don't know how the H is pronounced here in this case. It's unfortunate. Would have to do research on that. Whatever, by the Queen. Tolkien's, I'm not sure how it's pronounced. Wealthio? No, that should be wrong. Whatever. Sometimes Old English is difficult. Tolkien's source, however, may have lain not in Beowulf, but in Cinewulf's Christ, the same work from which he took the name Earendel, line 104, some 20 years earlier, where Earknanstan, precious holy stone, appears in line 1194 as a metaphor for Christ. This is made somewhat more likely by the spelling found and so on and so forth. Yeah, but so he goes through. Redliff goes here like through a lot of argumentation and hints and roots in mythology and texts and so on that hint into this particular direction. Yeah, it's a very interesting chapter. I can recommend reading it. I don't want to read the complete chapter here, but if you like if you want to look into this particular topic, that is where the idea that there is a connection between the Arkenstone and the Silmarilli, or one of the Silmarils, comes from. It's very interesting to look deeper into this, but it definitely shows where the idea of the name comes from, and there's some kind of connection between this for sure. How it looks exactly is difficult to say. It's only a bubble, it's a silly stone. Okay, well, I guess that's an interesting idea. Bilbo had a talent for finding things, it seems, yeah, for sure. But yeah, they are not the same. Later on, like Tolkien definitely had not in mind that the Arkenstone is a Silmaril when he for the published version. The idea might have come across during developing The Hobbit, writing it and thinking of it, and the inspiration for it might be drawn from there somewhere, but it's definitely not one of the Silmarilli, because those remain in the sky, in the water, and in the earth until the end of time, or until the end of the world, when it's remade. So yeah, in this regard, there's that. Yeah, you can argue the movie interpretation. That's like also in History of the Hobbit, Radcliffe also goes a bit into the visuals of the stone. Now to find the passage again. Although we are told Fëanor started by acquiring a great pearl, we could not even tell from this account whether the Silmarils were smooth or faceted. The pearl cannot have provided the actual body of the first Silmaril, since he has only one such pearl, yet makes 3 Silmarils before he runs out of material. Reference in the alliterative poems to fair enchanted globes of crystal, flight of the LotR from Valinor. This thrice enchanted globes of light imply a smooth sphere, but the descriptions of them in the 1926 sketch, History of Middle-earth 4:14, and 1930 Quenya, also in History of Middle-earth Book 4, are too cursory to provide any details beyond that they shine with their own inner light. Not until 1937 Quenta Silmarillion, which of course postdates The Hobbit and hence the Arkenstone, do we learn that all light that fell upon them they looked and reflected in marvelous hues, into which their own inner fire gave a surpassing loveliness, implying that they had facets that refracted incoming light. Compare Bilbo's first sight of the Arkenstone as a small globe that shone of its own light within, cut and fashioned by the dwarfs. It caught and splintered all lights it received. Emphasis mine. It thus seems that some of the most characteristic features of the Silmarils' appearance, familiar to us from the published Silmarillion, that it magnifies incoming light and that it splinters this light like a magnificent prism, derive not from the direct line of descent, Book of Lost Tales, and so on, but first appeared in the description of the Arkenstone in The Hobbit, and from there were imported back to what had been the main line of the Legendarium. This does not prove, of course, that the Arkenstone is Silmaril, but it does show that not only was the description of the gems of Gideon based upon the Silmarils, but that it in turn influenced the way the Silmarils were described henceforth. Yeah, that's also Radcliffe also goes into like the history of like Radcliffe definitely likes the idea a lot, or thinks it's true that Tolkien had, when he started writing The Hobbit, he had a deeper connection to his to his Silmarillion ideas, and in the early version Sauron is not there yet, but there's another character called Thu, which is kind of an, let's call it in the widest sense, an early version of Sauron, and he's also the necromancer. So the question is always, did Tolkien intend to include the Hobbit in the Silmarillion, or as he says in the letter, did he just borrow some of the names for the Hobbit, potentially also with some context of his original written mythology? You know, it's hard to tell. We would have to ask Tolkien himself, which we can't do, so it's impossible to tell from our today's perspective, but it is at least somewhat plausible that there are many connections there. I mean, also, he already included some places like Gondolin. One does not simply remove the MacGuffin. I have a question, if you could remove the Arkenstone, yes or no? I mean, yes. It's like the Holy Grail, it motivates, but yeah, it's maybe a good comparison, I guess. Still, I agree, it's not that the most important detail, but... Oh, I'm sure... I can see why you would argue you could remove it from the story, yes. But in the end, why are we discussing this even? It was not removed by Tolkien, it is part of the story. Here it is. I have to work tomorrow early. Oh no, Priscilla. Just say hi and leave my like. Thank you so much, Priscilla. Very unfortunate. But have a good one. Sleep well. I'm just skipping a bit through the chat for what I kind of missed. Kevin, welcome. Nice to see you. It all looks like the what if this Arkenstone is actually a Silmarillion question comes up. Now, it's a bit hard to tell in this context, but yeah, well, you can make so many things if you change a few others. No, a lake effect storm warning for tomorrow through Wednesday. Sounds annoying. But yeah, I think the Silmarillion in this regard is in my opinion too powerful an artifact for this to be simply available here. The dwarf possessing it. It also says that it's. I mean, it could be an assumption simply of Bilbo, but it's made by the dwarf, but it seems to be implied, which is different for the Silmarillion, and so on and so forth. So in the end, why would it be suddenly in the hands of the dwarf? That makes very little sense to me, to be honest. Methods of living in the Great Lakes region, we're expecting 8 to 16 inches of snow, maybe more. No. (16 inches are 40 centimeters, right? Roundabout. So half a meter, almost. Well, here today was also a relatively cold day, but it's not snowing. So it's okay, I guess. Yeah, interesting story. Not sure where it is written completely. If it's an unfinished tales or not. Or if it's in the appendix A. But yeah, that's an interesting accident now that you mention it. Let me just read it from chat really quick. Did you ever think it strange that Eowyn and Faramir both went to war in disguise, not wanting to be left behind? Of course, I'm talking about the Faramir 11th century before Eowyn. Yeah, that's actually it's an interesting coincidence. I agree with you. I'm not sure. Now, it must be Unfinished Tales then, chat. I'll be in Maui next week. I enjoy the cold from there. Sounds warm there, to be honest. Battle of the Camp. Well, it must be in the Third Age section anyway, I would assume. Yeah, here is the text. Kirion and Eorl. Here the text abruptly breaks off. The notes and jottings for its continuation are, for the most part, illegible. It is possible to make out, however, that men of the Oseot fought with Ondoher, it's also King of Gondor, and also that Ondoher's second son Faramir was ordered to remain in Minas Tirith as regent, but was not permitted by the law that both his sons should go into battle at the same time. A similar observation is made earlier in the narrative, but Faramir did not do so. He went to the war in disguise and was slain. The writing here is almost impossible to decipher, but it seems that Faramir joined the Oseot and was caught with a party of them as they retreated towards the Dead Marshes. The leader of the Oseot, whose name is indecipherable after the first element Mar, came to their rescue, but Faramir died in his arms, and was only when he searched his body that he found tokens that showed that he was a prince. The leader of the Oseot then went to join Minochtar at the head of the North Road in Silmarillion, who at the very moment was giving an order for a message to be taken to the prince in Minas Tirith, who was now the king. It was then that the leader of the Oseot gave him the news that the prince had gone disguised to battle and had been slain. The presence of the Oseot and the part played in their leader may explain the inclusion in the narrative, ostensibly in the account of the beginnings of the Friendship of Gondor and the Rohirrim, this elaborate story of the battle between the army of Gondor and the Wain Riders. So yeah, that was during the Wain Rider attack and the troubles in the regions due to that. Very interesting. Indeed, very interesting, chat. It's supposed to get down to minus 93 Celsius. Oh god, sounds cold. Too cold for my taste. But yeah, it's indeed a good observation and a very interesting detail that both Eowyn and Faramir, the potentially king of Gondor, in a long time before Eowyn even was born, that he also did something similar. It's kind of interesting. What's the continent south of Valinor? What's the continent? South of Valinor. So you mean this one here? I mean, is this south of Valinor? Well, it's at least south of Arda. That is the so-called Darkland. Southland. If the world is flat, how can there be a south? That's true, I guess, but on the map we can define the bottom as south, so that I guess works. So it would work differently on a flat world, I guess. But the Darklands, what is there? Ungoliant potentially flees here and eats herself. Beyond that, we know very little of it, to be fair. Now that you, the two fetters, is it possible that you wrote me an email with exactly this question some time ago and I simply forgot to answer it? If so, first of all, I'm very sorry that I didn't answer your mail, but I read it, and I remember it now, but I simply forgot. Well, that's very unfortunate, the two fetters. That's really unfortunate. I'm sorry. I always meant to answer it, but I definitely wanted to kind of look into the thing, and usually, like, I think that's not an easy to answer question. No problem. It's not an easy to answer question because not an easy to answer question sometimes requires time to answer it, and then I said, okay, I need some time for this, and then I forgot. So I'm a bit sorry for that. No, I thought it's an interesting question for sure. Is there divine intervention in this particular chapter? So I think there is definitely a component to this divine aspect of it. Like, there are multiple components in a way, if that makes sense. So, there is, let's call it some kind of, the law. For it is said in old law, the hands of the king are the hands of a healer. And so the rightful king could ever be known. And Gandalf, who stood by, said, men may long remember your words, Eoras. For there is hope in them. Maybe a king has indeed returned to Gondor, or have you not heard the strange tidings that have come to the city? And this concept alone is, I think, in a historical context that Tolkien might use here, has something divine, simply because it was believed, I think, back in the ancient times, and we often discussed this here in previous texts and ideas and videos, are even that like the idea. Aragorn is called Longshanks by Bill Ferny in the early chapters when they are in Bree, and also in the film. What is it? Sam calls him also Longshanks when he confronts him to help Frodo when in the Prancing Pony, if you remember. And yeah, in the other things also he's called Longshanks. There is a king, of course, of England. That's also called Longshanks. And I think what I read is, I'm not an expert on English kings, to be honest, but I read that the Hammer of the Scots, Mr. Longshanks, Mr. Longshanks, that sounds wrong. Edward, the first, Edward Longshanks, and the Hammer of the Scots, that's this guy. He is named, if I see this correctly, Edward, an Anglo-Saxon name, was not commonly given among aristocracy of England after the Norman conquest, but Henry, the father of Edward I, was devoted to the veneration of Edward the Confessor and decided to name his firstborn after the saint. So Edward the Confessor was an Anglo-Saxon king of England, and I think the life story of Aragorn is somewhat similar to the one of Edward the Confessor. Edward the Confessor was not called Longshanks, but it doesn't matter too much. I think there might be some connection here. And I think in this what is it called? The Royal Touch, I think it's called, yes. The Royal Touch, also known as King's Touch, was a form of laying on of hands whereby French and English monarchs touched their subjects, regardless of social class, with the intent to cure them of various diseases and conditions. So yeah, in this English tradition, though it might start later, there was a belief that the King of England was able to heal people by touching them. So I think this is where the idea of the hands of a healer might come from. It was kind of an ancient tradition, and you can definitely argue that the king. Like, you have to consider how Aragorn is kind of, I don't know, becoming king is something, you don't simply become king like if you go back all the way to the Numenoreans, it was a gift of the Valar and of the powers of the West to the remaining Edain to the remaining houses of men in this time where they could live on. And then somebody became king, but this whole becoming the Dunedain was a gift of the angels, of the servants of God, so to say, of supernatural beings to these men, of potentially God himself. And God was kind of revered by, or respected. Respect is the right word for this. By these, by the Dunedain of Numenor, by the Numenoreans, and in this context, of course, the king of them is also kind of be the representative of these people, and I think the belief that God basically placed the king there to rule and so on and so forth, and there's a connection that is going on there, kind of fits to this particular theme. And then you have the supernatural component of the hands of the king are the hands of a healer. Of course, here it is a bit different. I guess it's not like Aragorn touching, but I think it's the idea definitely comes from here. And yeah, for sure, you can definitely connect this to God, especially in context. Gandalf is there. Gandalf is literally like an angel sent back by God. He died. And then his spirit went to Eru, to God, and he sent him back and said, okay, you now are the boss of these wizards, and you do your thing, and you get authority and can now use a bigger portion of your actual power as an angel, as a Maya, and go back there. And it's also Gandalf crowning later Aragorn and so on. So of course, in this whole context of how Aragorn becomes king, this whole in the lore of old is told the hands of the king are the hands of a healer, and then he comes to the house of healing and heals the people. So in this further context, I would definitely agree on that there might be some form of I wouldn't call it I'm not sure how you phrased it, divine intervention or something, but I think it's perfectly fitting that there is definitely the will of Eru behind this. Further in the lore, we have, for example, if we look back at Isildur, and we also know this from the Númenórean kings, we are told that for an oath, a Númenórean king can basically call upon Eru. And this is what, for example, in the case of Isildur and the Oathbreakers happened. Like there was an oath that those men from the White Mountains swore to Isildur, and they broke it. And Eru accepted this oath, and breaking this also made then Isildur curse them, and this curse became reality for them, and so they became these ghosts, these oath breakers. So there is definitely a divine connection between a Númenórean king, or a Dúnedain king in this case, the king of Gondor, and to God, to divinity, if that makes sense. And yeah, you also are of course right. I think you mean in this particular section here, when you also mentioned the window. Let me just see if I'm in the right chapter here. All of healing, and then Aragorn had indeed some forgotten power of Westerness, or whether it was but his words of the Lady Eowyn that wrought on them. As the sweet influence of the herb stole about the chamber, it seemed to those who stood by that a keen wind blew through the window, and it bore no scent, but was an air wholly fresh and clean and young, as it had not been breathed by any living thing, and came new made from snowy mountains high beneath a dome of stars, or from shore silver far away, washed by seas of foam. So there's definitely, as you mentioned, something here that Tolkien in my opinion, also wants to point out here in this further context, that there is let's say, something more at work than just some herbs here. Yeah, from exactly the snowy mountains beneath a dome of stars, or from shores of silver far away. You can definitely interpret this as Aman and Valinor. Wow. Yeah, it's also an interesting idea. That sounds like the Holy Spirit in Christianity. Yeah, something like that. So I would agree that there's definitely maybe something divine here at work as well. And I mean, Gandalf already is a divine entity. He's also present in these times here. Don't worry. I'm not. So yeah, I would. I definitely see the parallels. Of course, in a way, we are here in the realms of a bit of interpretation, but I think there are some plausible assumptions, or it's kind of plausible to interpret it this way. Was Gandalf the only successful wizard? It depends a bit on the version, Jimmy, in this regard. From just a look at the Lord of the Rings, yes, it seems so. Though, to be fair, you could argue that even though Radagast lost his ways a little bit, he at least indirectly saved Gandalf, which was definitely helpful, I would argue. So yeah, the versions. There are the two blue wizards, which are always a topic here in this streams. I think there is not a single stream where we have not talked about the blue wizards, because I think they're always a very interesting, fascinating topic, and people often wonder about these mysterious wanderers in the East. And yeah, those, in most versions, they are not successful, but there's one, the last version Tolkien wrote, they are actually successful. The other two came much earlier, at the same time probably as Glorfindel, when matters became very dangerous in the Second Age. Glorfindel was sent to aid Elrond and was, though not yet set, preeminent in the War of Eriador. But the other two Istari were sent for a different purpose, Morinechtar and Romestamo, Darkness Slayer and East Helper. Their task was to circumvent Sauron, to bring help to the few tribes of men that had rebelled from Melkor worship, to stir up rebellion, and after his first fall to search out his hiding, in which they failed. So here in this part they failed, and to cause dissension and disarray among the Dark East. They must have had, and now comes the success, they must have had great, very great influence on the history of the Second Age and Third Age in weakening and disarraying the forces of East, who would both in the Second and Third Age otherwise have outnumbered the West. So in this text, though they can't find Sauron after he lost the first time the One Ring, or after he lost the One Ring due to the actions of Gil-galad, Elendil, and then finally Isildur, who cut off his finger with a ring. And this time he went into hiding, and the Blue Wizards failed to find him there. That's what it. And after his first fall, to search out his hiding, but further also to cause dissension and disarray. And then he says they had very great influence on the history of the Second Age in weakening and disarraying the forces of the East, who would both in the Second and Third Age otherwise outnumber the West. So that these forces in the East don't outnumber the forces in the West, that was prevented by the two Blue Wizards. In this context, you could argue that the Blue Wizards are successful. However, that is only the case in this version of the text. In the other text, I don't know, I think the most interesting in this context is always the letters of Tolkien. Where Tolkien writes, I doubt if they have distinctive colors. It's from 1958, by the way. Distinction was only required, by the way, it's letter 211 to Rona Bear from 14th of October 1958. Where was I? Something with cults. Yeah, I doubt if they had distinctive colors, so at this time he thought already about blue. Distinction was only required in the case of the three who remained in the relatively small area of the Northwest. I really do not know anything clearly about the other two, since they do not concern the history of the Northwest. I think they went as emissaries to distant regions east and south. Here they also go to the south, but in the other text only the east is mentioned. Far out of Numenorean range. Missionaries to enemy-occupied lands, as it were. What success they had, I do not know, but I fear that they failed, as Saruman did, though doubtless in different ways. And I suspect they were founders or beginners of secret cults and magic traditions that outlasted the fall of Sauron. So here in this text they are not successful. In the other text, which we find in the text in the book Unfinished Tales, there's a text of Tolkien or essay published called The East Study, and there they also fail in their original task that they have. Though it's different for sure for the third text Tolkien wrote. Suddenly Tolkien thought, well, it would be cool if the Blue Wizards are kind of successful, so they are successful. So in this case, if you take the last writing of Tolkien here, then you could argue, well, besides Gandalf, also the two Blue Wizards were successful. And yeah, what happened with Radagast, we don't know. That he's not present at the Council of Elrond, even though he was searched for to be summoned there, and he could not be found, definitely tells us that, yeah, maybe Radagast was also not successful. Even though he at least distantly had some success, I guess. Is that why they got the blues? Just kidding. Not bad. Also nice to see you, even though I'm like 15 minutes too late to welcome you. I heard theories that one of the Blue Wizards was a mouse of Sauron. It's an interesting idea, but it would be strange in my opinion. I mean, it's not impossible. Let's It's a bit difficult to now look deeper into this, to be honest. Okay, here we have in the chapter of The Lord of the Rings, the Black Gates open. The Black Gate opens. Yeah, the lieutenant of the Tower of Barad-dûr he was, and his name is remembered in no tale, for he himself had forgotten it, and he said, I am the mouse of Sauron. But it is told that he was a renegade who came of the race of those that are named the Black Númenóreans, for they established their dwellings in Middle-earth during the years of Sauron's domination, and they worshipped him, being enamored of evil knowledge. And he entered the service of the Dark Tower when it first rose again, and because of his cunning he grew ever higher in the Lord's favor, and he learned great sorcery and knew much of the mind of Sauron, and he was more cruel than any orc. More cruel than any orc, yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's a kind of a creepy entity for sure. But yeah, here in this text, it is established that he is a Black Númenórean. This would exclude him being a Maiar, because he must be a Dúnedain. The Blue Wizards are also, like Gandalf, Saruman, Radagast, Maiar, so angels of lower rank or whatever you want to call them. So the Black Númenóreans, for people wondering, it's basically, let me just see where do we have a map. Let's take a Third Age map, I guess. Well, Third Age map is indeed strange, but yeah, Umbar. Some of the Númenóreans lived here in Umbar, or descendants of those, and those were kind of from the time when some Númenóreans, the not faithful Númenóreans, the so-called Kingsmen, started worshipping Sauron, and some of them were able to survive and flee to Umbar, and from here, these Black Númenóreans sometimes went into the service of Sauron. Not always, but sometimes. They also had influence on Umbar and regions, and it seems he is from those Kingsmen of old, and that went into the service of Sauron. When is hard to tell. He could be very old for whatever reason, even though it seems he had not a ring of power for that to be possible. I don't know. Gandalf has some of the finest lines in the book as he tells the Mouse of Sauron to kiss dust. But yeah, I would definitely argue, no, he's like, I think it's an interesting idea, but I think there's, at least on Tolkien's side, nothing that indicates that that was the intention of Tolkien. If that's your headcanon or people's headcanon, that's completely fine, of course. But I would definitely argue that they are not or that they would not become a lieutenant of Sauron or whatever, of Barad-dûr. It's I think they would have a more prominent or role as powerful entities as they are. But yeah, they're not. A Black Numenorean is not a Maya, so I think that kind of already rules this out in theory, even though you can always make an argument for that, I guess. The horse upon which the mouse rode had flames in its eye sockets and in its nostrils. Maybe that horse was part dragon. Yeah, maybe. The horses are always strange in a way. Yeah, we know that 3, was it 4 of the Nazgul? No, I think 3. From the Silmarillion in the Akalabes. Or is it Akalabes? Yes. Yet Sauron was ever guileful, and it is said that among those whom he ensnared with the 9 rings, 3 were great lords of the Numenorean race. So there's that. If they were also considered black Numenoreans or not is really hard to tell, but it is possible. It's actually quite likely. Yeah, that's a good point. The Mouth of Sauron could conceivably have been given one of the recovered rings of the dwarves. I mean, Sauron recovered 3 of those, so yeah, that's also a possibility. Though it's not clear when Sauron recovered those rings, I guess. And since when the Mouth of Sauron is around, but yeah, potentially it is a possibility for sure. I wonder if the horses they used were captured from kings of old and transformed into foul beasts. Definitely a possibility, I think. Though, to be fair, if you mean the so-called fell beasts, there's no official name for the winged steeds of the Nazgul. If you mean those, it's interesting that in the book they have like beaks, so that's strange. You could imagine maybe some bird entity that was used to transform or corrupted into these beings. I don't know. Yeah, for sure. It will still be a living man. That's right. Yeah, maybe corrupted eagles, but I don't know. The idea that some eagles were captured by Melkor slash Morgoth originally is there in the Book of Lost Tales at least. But yeah, I don't know. The great eagles in some versions were also Maiar, so also angels of lower rank that took the form of an eagle. That would also explain why they can talk, I guess, but yeah. More as an insult towards the Rohirrim. Yeah, maybe too, but I guess they also had practical use. Like, especially the horses of the Nazgul would need to be able to endure the terror presence of the Nazgul, which I think would be strange. Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. I think, yeah, George writes, I think I heard somewhere that Morgoth captured the eagles specifically to find a way to learn the secret of flight from them. That is exactly what it is. Or the passage I had in mind from the Book of Lost Tales, Part 2, I think. I'm trying to find it, currently not doing so. I forgot how it's phrased. Currently just trying to find the quote. I don't find it, chat. I can't find it, chat, sorry. I don't know how it was phrased. Okay, I haven't found it, chat. Not sure if somebody of you finds it. Leskos, yes. Yeah, here I found it. Then arose Thorondor, king of eagles, and he loved not Melkor, for Melkor had caught many of his kindred and chained them against sharp rocks to squeeze from them the magic words whereby he might learn to fly, for he dreamed of contending even against Manwë in the air. And when they would not tell, he cut off their wings and sought to fashion therefrom a mighty pair for his use, but it availed not. That's from Book of Lost Tales. I found it. Kind of strange that I have not written this here in the in my notes. Feels a bit strange. And that's from the Book of Lost Tales Part 2, chat. He went evil with Icarus, yeah, for sure. It's not magic words, it's hollow bones and feathers, Morgoth. Yeah, it took. Sorry that it was silent for some moment. It sometimes, it's not easy finding all these quotes so fast. Tolkien's description of the fell beast, so-called fell beast, is distinctly odd, bird-like but featherless. Yeah, that's very strange. I mean, in this regard, they remind me more of a dragon, if that makes sense. With like something, yeah, a dragon with a beak. It's a bit strange, but whatever. More like flying dinosaur. Yeah, maybe also that. For sure. Penguins. That's true, though. Yeah, penguins have feathers, so yeah, that is true. But they're flightless. But they can swim. It seems also like that penguins have the most feathers of all birds. Yeah, that's true. Peter Jackson and his team definitely leaned into the dragon direction for the Nazgul winged beast. Yeah, I agree. Definitely a similarity there towards the dragons, which I think kind of makes sense, except for the beaks, I guess. Though to be fair, I'm not sure. I'm not too like maybe there's some myth where dragon also has a beak. I don't know. Yeah, they also look pretty cool. I agree. That's there. They made a great job there. I would love to see a film about Morgoth. I guess at some point it might happen. Who knows? At least when the rights run out and become a public domain. Dang, I just learned something new about penguins on Tolkien's stream. I was not aware of that as well, but I guess it makes sense. Okay. It seems like that, I don't know, it might be more complicated. There's like I found another online article which basically says, well, there's some information on Wikipedia and there's like a National Geographic news story and seems to be not true. First, these birds have a maximum of 9 feathers per square centimeter, a lower density than any of the earlier reports suggested. That's somewhere near the record. That's nowhere near the record for birds. The white-throated dipper, a small Eurasian bird that forages in cold mountain streams, has plumage that is 6 times more dense. So maybe penguins don't have the most dense feather, the highest feather density among birds, but whatever. You can link the article in the thing here. You have to do a painting of a Nazgul riding a penguin. He did say that the fell beasts were remnants of an older world that had long outstayed their day. So maybe that's a hint towards a dinosaur. Yeah, that's maybe true. Assume that the phrase "King of Men" was related by Sauron. If someone could use it as a mark of the pride of this man. I mean, I think Sauron's intention was definitely to kind of trigger the Numenorians. Tolkien even did an illustration that looks like a Petrosaur. Okay, interesting. So yeah, at least we learned something, that's for sure. That's, I guess, always the interesting part in stuff like this. Can't wait to watch Jurassic World Middle Earth. Or we'll just be renting. We got tons all over the place. Raining, not renting. I can't read any more chat. Is it the cover from the Vinya Tengwar issue 33? I'm not sure if it is the drawing, to be honest, but it could be the drawing. Maybe I'll link it in chat. You can't show it here on screen, I guess. I'm not sure if that is an illustration by Tolkien. Might not be the case. I'm not sure. So I don't know if that is the mentioned illustration. Okay, maybe I found, maybe that's the correct one. No, it's not. No, we haven't done a watch party of the cartoons yet, though it's often requested. You're right, the Two Towers book should have one, right? That's definitely by Tolkien, though. But yeah, the cartoon versions, we might do this at one point, but we have not done yet. We only did the Peter Jackson stuff. Yeah, it would be very likely that it's a fell beast, I guess. Yeah, it's easier. Like sometimes there isn't a good overview of all the illustrations of Tolkien. That's true. So it's easy to forget like the cover arts and stuff. No, the art I posted first is made by somebody else in 1992. Okay, understood. Oh, my mistake. So chat, I have to admit I'm already getting tired. So today will be definitely a shorter stream. Unfortunately, I would like to be more, but you definitely notice that my energy is a bit low today. I often for far longer silent than I should. But I'm definitely a bit tired, more on the tired side. Yeah, the covers are definitely pretty cool. I agree. Coming back to the earlier discussion, I think that Tolkien described the origin of Bjornings in the early story of Cirion and Eorl in the aftermath of the first battle against the Wain Riders. I can look into that, find it. didn't find many Bjorn entries. Maybe 4 on the book. I noticed that they lowered the rental price for the Rohirrim from $18 to $9. Well, it's actually quite cheap, I guess. I want to watch it. I want to watch, but I don't know if I should wait until I wait to see if it will change. Will be no charge in a month or so? Okay. But I couldn't find the details on the Bjornings here. Here the peoples of Middle Earth just state that the Bjornings and the Oseot had were like kind of related. I was yelling at the characters. I mean, to be fair, even in Tolkien's story, the most characters that are not very smart. It's a bit unfortunate. The Eoseot are the precursors to the Rohirrim, exactly. They later become the people of Rohan, the Eorlingas. The Steelbook 4K edition of War of the Rohirrim is the only version with bonus content. Interesting. I agree, it could have been better, but I've seen worse too. I think it was okay. It had some interesting ideas. It had its moments. I guess it's better than 5 Armies, but it's not difficult. Even though 5 Armies also has some really good moments, it also is such a weird film in so many ways. Yeah, the Princess of Rovanion, yeah. But yeah, currently pre-order it, but haven't seen it. Okay, I've seen it in cinema one time. I might get some copy for a watch party later this year. Might make a watch party then for War of the Rohirrim, but let's just get some time between. Maybe also some other questions. Which we might have skipped for now. But yeah, Jeff, I have to admit I'm slowly falling asleep here. That's a bit unfortunate. How many times did you have to read the Silmarillion before you could keep all the characters straight in your head? That's a good. I don't know, to be honest. I'm usually I'm relatively decent at memorizing stuff, but definitely it was not like I read it the first time. Like the first time I really struggled with it, but over time it got better. Twice. Okay, not bad. But yeah, I don't know. The Silmarillion is always for me. I did not try to start reading it in a kind of chronological order. It was more like looking at the chapters, what's in it, and then comparing it to Lord of the Rings and see, okay, this is this character from mentioned here in the Lord of the Rings stuff, and then kind of try to puzzle a picture of the whole thing of the Lord of the Rings and the Silmarillion together. And this combination, it kind of worked, I think. It also helps making videos where the names you have to write down again. Like, I also a person, if I start writing something down, I usually can memorize it better. When was a good doggy? Does anyone else think Oromir should have put up beware the dog sign in this yard? I mean, even put fence, just let Huan run all around the neighborhood. No, I think Huan was a good dog. A best boy. Jump back pages helps me to memorize. I think it's a fun task, but I get what most people would find that off-putting. Yeah, I think there are different techniques to kind of get it in your mind, but yeah, working on videos also definitely helped. especially learning all the weird family trees and stuff, that was definitely mostly from videos. Once you have created the family tree a few times yourself in Adobe Premiere, you kind of get it down. Could you look up the Reader's Companion, how Gandalf's mental duel with Sauron at Amon Hen is described? Reader's Companion. I'm not sure if... Do you think there are any additional information there? I don't know. It seems to be not much on that. Let me try to kind of find this here. It's in the chapter, I think, The White Rider. Where do we start? For he came here... Treebeard is Fangorn, the guardian of the forest. He is the oldest of the Ents, the oldest living thing that still walks beneath the sun upon this Middle Earth. I hope indeed, Legolas, that you may yet meet him. Merry and Pippin have been fortunate. They met him here, even where we sit. For he came here 2 days ago, and bore them away to his dwelling, far off the roots of the mountains. He often comes here, especially when his mind is uneasy and rumors of the world outside trouble him. I saw him 4 days ago, striding among the trees, and I think he saw me, for he paused. But I did not speak, for I was heavy. I was heavy with sword and weary after my struggle with the Eye of Mordor, and he did not speak either, nor call my name. Perhaps he also thought that you were Saruman, said Gimli, but you speak of him as he was a friend. I thought Fangorn was dangerous. Dangerous? Cried Gandalf, and so I am. I am very dangerous. And so am I very dangerous, more dangerous than anything you will ever meet unless you are brought alive before the seat of the Dark Lord. And there's only like very little on this. 4 days ago was the 27th February. Gandalf's struggle with the Eye of Mordor had been the previous day, when he fought to influence Frodo on Amon Hen. Sun seemed dark and the world dim and remote, and I saw nothing save the distant hills. It seems strange that Aragorn but should see nothing on Amon Hen when Frodo saw so much, and when it seems clear that it was the seed and not the ring that gave Frodo his enhanced vision. In a draft of this chapter, Trotter sees orcs and an eagle and the same figure of an old man in rags that Frodo sees in Galadriel's mirror. At the end of this text, Tolkien wrote, "The second vision of Amon Hen is inartistic. Let Trotter be stopped by noise of orcs and let him see nothing." Frodo certainly sees, even if only as small as remote visions, much further than would be normal even from the height of Amon Hen. The published text seems to say that the ring interferes with the sight, but that power of the seed of seeing gradually overcomes this. Christopher Tolkien notes that the present text replaced one in which the power of Amon Hen follows immediately and explicitly on the description of inhibiting effect of the ring on sight. At first, he could see little. He seemed to be in the world of mist in which there was only shadows. The ring was on him. Then the virtue written above power of Amon Hen worked upon him. The treason of Isengard, square brackets in original. Further note: several readers have compared the seed of Amon Hen with the high seat of Odin, from which he could see over the whole earth, and which Tolkien mentions on fairy stories. So I don't know if there is much information on this particular thing here. Can't find any more, chat. Sorry. Yeah, he's recapping the story, exactly. It's what the section I just read. That's where he briefly mentions his struggle with Sauron to distract him or to, do his stuff to help Frodo, and then this happens. The resting Gandalf was a brick. Yeah, don't underestimate Sauron, of course, in this regard. But yeah, I don't know, chat. There's not much I can add here, unfortunately. On the seat of hearing. Then you hear things instead of seeing them, I guess. You find out a lot about people that you never wanted to know. Also possible, for sure. So chat, I'm unfortunately slowly running out of steam today. I have to admit, chat. So that is why we potentially, I don't know, slowly call it a day. I don't know, to be honest. Yeah, this question also comes up a lot. Is your little icon in the right bottom like my channel logo? Yes, it is. It is distantly inspired by it's called the self-portrait of Alfred Hitchcock. Of course, I didn't try to make it one-to-one, but it's the silhouette of the philosopher. And I forgot which one it was. Was it Aristoteles? There's a statue of him. I kind of used that to make the silhouette there. But I thought it was an interesting idea for a little logo thing, which I did early. So, yes, there is definitely inspiration. Fortunately, it's over 3 hours. Yeah, at least we got to the 3-hour mark. It might be the thinker, I'm not sure, to be honest. I made this like, I don't know, 2017 or 16 or something. I think it's 16. It's almost 10 years ago. It's hard to believe, but I made this 9 years ago. I can't fully remember. It might be a no, to be fair, but we would have to look into it, and I currently could not find it looking, skipping a bit through the book. I thought it might be. But yeah, Tolbrandir in the middle, to come back to this for a moment. As you go down the water, he said, you will find that trees will fail and you come to a barren country. There the river flows in stony vales amid high moors, until at last, after many leagues, it comes to the tall island of the Tindrog, what we call Tolbrandir. There it casts its arms about the steep shores of the isle, and falls then with a great noise and smoke over the cataracts of Rauros down into the Nindalf and Wetwang, as it's called in our tongue. Behold, the Tolbrandir, said Aragorn, pointing out at the tall peak. Upon the left stands Amon Lau, and upon the right Amon Hen, the hills of hearing and of sight. In the days of the great kings there were high seats upon them, and watch was kept there, but it is said that no foot of man or beast has ever been set upon Tolbrandir. Ere the shade of nights falls, we shall come to them. I hear the endless voice of Rauros calling. Maybe it could be there. Not my notes towards this. Let me just check the atlas really quick. I don't think we find something there, but maybe it's helpful. Like, to be fair, I also don't have a good explanation for this particular place, to be honest. It's like an interesting addition that's always kind of mysterious. 84. Hill of the eye, the hill of the ear, the seat of hearing, the seat of seeing, North Stair, Rauros, Tolbrandir in the middle. No, it's just a reference. I don't know. I don't know, chat. But yeah, you could maybe definitely make an argument that, I don't know, between seeing and hearing, there's like, I don't know, the knowledge that gets the data from these both ways of observation. And in this regard, is like, yeah, I don't know, the mind, which is also something that is very vague. You know what an ear is, you know what an eye is. You can use those. You can also use your mind, of course, but the mind is a far more abstract thing. That's maybe why nobody ever set foot on that. But I don't know. It's going very deep into interpretational stuff, I think. Yeah, Joe, I agree with you. It might be really the best interpretation I could also come up here on the fly. Another naturally magic place seems to be the Mirrormere. Alongside the Anduin, there are wonders to behold, almost doing, potentially. Hard to tell, to be fair, who is behind that exactly, but I think like a world like fantasy world like that of Tolkien definitely needs these places. There always needs to be some enigma and mysteries, like Tom Bombadil and his old forest and Old Man Willow and so on. So it's not too unusual that you have these unusual places, and we don't get a detailed explanation what's going on there exactly. Most of these places are visited in fellowship. Two Towers and Return of the King are sparser on that, I recall. Yeah, that might be true, to be fair. Like, you could maybe argue that the journey of Frodo gets less and less mysterious in a way. Or less and less, I don't know, mythology-esque. Maybe until the end, though, but yeah. In between that, they make their way to Gondor, and suddenly this place also becomes more and more grounded. So I guess there's also a giant spider and stuff. I don't know. Yeah, exactly. It's like the the magic, so to say, is fading, or the mythology. The scouring of the Shire is depressingly grounded. Yeah, that's, I think you could do. I mean, the Shire in of itself is also less mythological. It's more like an anachronism in the book to help us connect more with the world and the stories of the Hobbits. I have two different translations for it in two copies. That one greatly annoys me. Is the latter one by Krege? No, it's the other way around. It seems to be the Karoo translation ist die Befreiung des Auenlandes. Good night, everyone. Thanks. Yeah, thank you for staying so long, Murray. I'm also kind of on my basically on my, what do you call it, last legs? No, I forgot how it was called. And an end has come for the elder of the story and of song. Yeah, I'm exhausted. The last legs, then potentially that is the phrasing I was looking for. I'm really tired, chat. I'm falling half asleep. That's why I'm a bit slow here on reacting to the chat and so on. But yeah, we had like decent 3.5, let's say 3 hours. If we subtract the countdown at the beginning. Yeah, I just looked it up in the Karoo translation, and there it says the Befreiung. Then I assume Verwüstung of die Verwüstung des Auenlandes, the other translations by Wolfgang Krege. Yeah, we're just here until you pull the plug. See that. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed the stream so far. And an end has come to our stream of lore and of song, yeah, for sure. And pick out a film and get cozy. Yeah, potentially. That's definitely a possibility. Is that the reason why you're on the stream or why you leave it? It's as good a reason to sign off as any. But yeah, then I would say we call it a day. Another rewatch of the movie starting now. I can leave chat open, then you can do the rewatch. We call it a day. It's a day. Good night and be well. Yeah, thank you for joining. Yeah, I definitely have to wrap up, chat. I'm just too tired. Sorry that usually we go a bit longer here on the stream, I know, but sometimes, you know, it's late and stuff. Good night, Chris. Thanks for the stream. Gute Nacht. Dankeschön. Amazing bad boy. And the others? Cheese soup for supper. It was an exceptional stream today. Well, I felt like I was a bit low energy, to be fair. So that could have been a bit better, but we had some interesting questions. And glad that you people enjoyed this. I think there's still somebody missing in the credits. Of course, I did not re-render them. Forgot who I might have missed. That somebody subscribed recently to my channel. To the Twitch channel, to be precise. All I need to do now is find that. Make it there. GTS Playing has subscribed on Twitch, so shoutouts to him. I think he's not there in the credits, and somebody else is missing and subscribed on YouTube. So thank you for your support, continuing support, I should say. Much appreciated. I think Zerptwerp might not be there. Murray is not in the list, sorry for that. So shout outs to you as well. I think the rest should be in the list. I'm not sure if I forgot somebody. But yeah, much appreciated. Thank you people for your support here. I hope you enjoyed the stream. I wish you a fantastic rest of the day, or a good evening, a good night. If you haven't pressed the like button yet, feel free to do so now. Maybe leave a comment later, check out the other stuff on the channel or so. And have a fantastic rest of the day, good night, or good morning in case of, for example, the Amazing Bad Boy. And whatever time you might watch this, in whatever time zone. I try to make another stream next Sunday, I think. But let me just look on my calendar really quick. If I have something there, because in my mind there is like something next week. No, that was on Friday. No, it's looking good. Okay, so most likely next Sunday again. If you prefer like another date, feel free to post it somewhere in the comments or something, like maybe this VOD or another. Make a new comment. Don't answer to years old comments of mine or of other people. I will find those. But yeah, if you wish like for a different time or something, I don't know. But currently scheduling it Sunday kind of works. I try to make these streams once a week, I think. If possible, sometimes it might not work out. Maybe then it will be Monday or Tuesday or something like that. But yeah, these are usually the times I plan to have these little streams here. Glad you people enjoy them and that you always join here and be supportive and ask interesting questions to discuss. Most of the time we can answer them, sometimes not, sometimes it's difficult. And I think that's basically it, isn't it, chat? I think it is. So, have a good one, gute Nacht, and see you people next time. Goodbye.